Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back not to the age of chivalry or plagues, but to something even weirder, Florida in the early 2010s. The sun is hot, the air is muggy, and the mosquitoes are already plotting your downfall. But we're not here for the alligators or the hurricanes, or the guy who tried to rob a Wendy's with an alligator, though, honestly, respect. No, tonight's tale is about the great, the infamous, the what the hell is happening era of the bath salts epidemic, the zombie drug panic that swept across Florida like a fever dream inside a swamp. And since this is our brand new channel, before you settle in, maybe take a second to hit like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what you find here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you, and what the weirdest news headline you've seen this week is. I guarantee nothing tops Florida man high on bath salts fights invisible alligators. Now dim those lights, switch on your fan for some gentle white noise, unless you live in Florida, in which case maybe double check your windows and get comfortable. Let's really settle in. Let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered, what did people think bath salts actually were? Did anyone ever try to take a normal bath? Or did they just assume all powder was a controlled substance after 2012? What happens when your neighbor starts eating street signs? Did anyone ever sleep during the bath salts panic? Or was everyone just up all night waiting for the next news report about a man in jean shorts fighting traffic cones? Would you have survived 2010's Florida, or would you end up arm wrestling a mailbox for territory? How do you tell your boss you're late because zombies were blocking your driveway again? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in Florida, 2012. You have sand in your shoes, suspicious powder on your dashboard, and a creeping sense that nothing is quite as it seems. Good luck. Welcome to Florida, where the wildlife is deadly, the humidity could kill a cactus, and the headlines read like rejected movie scripts. Before bath salts even showed up, life here was already an endurance sport. Mosquitoes the size of poodles, thunderstorms that arrive at 2 p.m. sharp, and your neighbor keeps an alligator in the bathtub because it helps with stress. This is the stage for our story, a place where weird is just the default setting. Let's start with the basics. Step outside and take a breath. The air isn't just humid, it's actively judging you for wearing real pants. Your glasses fog up instantly, and there's a 30% chance that what you just inhaled was a love bug, a mosquito, or some mysterious pollen that will leave you sneezing for a week. Florida isn't just a place you visit, it's a place that sticks to you, literally. The ground feels like a sponge that someone left in the microwave, and the scent is equal parts sunscreen, hot asphalt, and something suspiciously like boiled frog. And then there's the wildlife. You might think you're living in a tropical paradise, but the reality is closer to an unregulated animal reality show. The local raccoons have unionized, the lizards outnumber people 3-1, and it's entirely possible you'll find an invasive python in your air conditioner. Even the squirrels look like they're one energy drink away from starting a turf war. Every morning you peer out your window, not to check the weather, but to see if there's a possum doing yoga on your car again. Let's not forget the weather. Other states have seasons. Florida has moods. At 9 a.m., the sun is so intense you could fry an egg on your forehead. But by 2 p.m., it's a monsoon, and your street has become a river. This is completely normal. In fact, if it's not raining sideways at some point during the afternoon, you start to worry that something's gone terribly wrong. Everyone here owns at least 3 umbrellas and a canoe, just in case. Even the weather apps have given up. Your phone just shrugs and says good luck. Florida's sense of normal extends to its local news. Forget scandals in City Hall. The top story tonight is man wrestles iguana for sandwich behind Taco Bell. Did you lose a shoe to a rogue snapping turtle? That's just Tuesday. Sometimes the local news is so outlandish, it feels like the anchors are playing a game of how weird can we make this. And if you think you've seen it all, just wait. Tomorrow's forecast includes a rain of frogs and probably another Florida man story that defies explanation. Daily life here means accepting that, yes, you might have to share your swimming pool with a family of ducks. And, yes, the guy next door really does own a parrot that shouts "lawyer up" whenever the HOA drives by. Your neighbor's landscaping is a mix of native plants and whatever survived last year's hurricane. People here have an attitude best described as optimistic resignation. They've seen it all, and they know that no matter how strange it gets, it can always get stranger. And all of this was before the bath salts epidemic. Before the news stories about zombie drugs, face eating, and police chasing shoeless men through the Everglades, Florida was already operating at full capacity for the bizarre. Bath salts didn't make Florida weird, they just raised the stakes. In a place where your backyard can contain both a citrus grove and a colony of feral peacocks, it takes a lot to surprise anyone. So tonight, as we dive into the saga of the bath salts epidemic, remember, in Florida, the baseline is already somewhere between peculiar and "are you kidding me?" Here, the laws of reality are more like gentle guidelines. And if you ever visit, don't bother asking, is this normal? Because in Florida, normal is just another word for not yet illegal. Let's talk about the zombie drug. Bath salts were not, in fact, for making your tub smell nice. These were synthetic cathinones, chemicals cooked up in someone's garage, sold in gas stations, and marketed as everything except what they actually were. The only thing scarier than the drug itself was how little anyone knew about it. First off, the name bath salts is one of history's greatest marketing misdirections, right up there with calling spam mail electronic correspondence or naming that meat product at the gas station hot dogs. These drugs didn't fizz, they didn't smell like lavender, and nobody in Florida was using them to soak sore feet after a long day. Instead, they were popping up on the bottom shelf at gas stations, tucked right next to herbal incense, plant food, and other things that definitely weren't going to win anyone a Nobel Prize in chemistry. Now let's clear up a crucial point. Nobody who bought these was under the impression they were getting Epsom salts. These were packets with names like Ivory Wave, Cloud 9, Vanilla Sky, and Drone, often sporting cartoon dolphins or neon stripes, as if Lisa Frank had gone rogue and started designing drug labels. The fine print always read, "Not for human consumption." That's the universal sign for someone, somewhere, is absolutely going to consume this. And in Florida, it seemed like everyone wanted to give it a try, usually just to see if the rumors were true, or because someone at a party said, "It's legal, bro." The actual chemistry was flexible, to put it mildly. Synthetic cathinones are a family of drugs loosely related to the active ingredient in the cat plant, chewed in East Africa and the Middle East for a mild buzz. What ended up in these packets, though, was anything but mild. The recipes changed constantly to stay a step ahead of the law. Think of it as whack-a-mole, but with substances you shouldn't put anywhere near your body. If lawmakers banned mephedrone, manufacturers switched to MDPV. If MDPV got banned, they'd move on to alpha PVP, methylone, or something that sounds like a Wi-Fi password. The result? No one, including the people making it, knew exactly what was in any given packet. Side effects ranged from jittery and chatty to convinced you're being chased by invisible raccoons. The medical literature politely calls these reactions unpredictable. The news preferred the term zombie outbreak. Users reported everything from heart palpitations and extreme paranoia to superhuman strength, sudden public nudity, and the irresistible urge to wrestle street signs. The true panic started with the headlines. You couldn't go a week in 2012 without seeing the words flesh-eating, rampage, or bath salts splashed across every major network. TV anchors seemed genuinely alarmed, as if Florida was about to become ground zero for the actual apocalypse. Parents called emergency meetings at schools. Gas station clerks started looking at customers the way zookeepers look at baboons right before feeding time. Even police officers, who had seen their share of weird, were left Googling symptoms and investing in bite-proof gloves. And, to be fair, some of the stories were objectively terrifying. There were reports of people running into traffic, climbing onto rooftops, or trying to chew through fences. Emergency rooms became the new nightclubs, packed, sweaty, and absolutely no one is having fun. Doctors invented whole new categories of patient. The police scanner in Miami started sounding like a mashup of The Walking Dead and America's Funniest Home Videos. But beneath all the panic, the real terror was the unknown. There was no manual, no antidote, and no way to know if the packet you bought would make you jittery or send you on a 3-day quest to find the portal to Lizard World. Parents panicked, politicians scrambled, and everyone else kept asking, how did we let this happen? And why, for the love of all that is good, did we call them bath salts? So if you ever wondered why Floridians freaked out so much, just remember, the scariest thing isn't always the monster you know. Sometimes it's the powder in your neighbor's glove box, wearing a neon label, waiting for its big moment on the 11 o'clock news. Picture this. It's 2011, and you walk into a gas station for beef jerky. Next to the register, tiny packets of Ivory Wave, Cloud 9, and Vanilla Sky, all promising for legal reasons, not for human consumption. Did anyone believe that? No. Did people buy them anyway? Oh, absolutely. Let's take a moment to appreciate the Florida gas station, a place that exists outside the normal rules of time and commerce. It's 3 a.m., the fluorescent lights are flickering, and there's a sticky patch near the soda fountain you don't ask about. Behind the counter, there's a shelf holding cigarettes, scratch-off tickets, and a lineup of mysterious packets that look like they were designed during a fever dream at a rave. If you want a metaphor for the early 2010s, this is it. A place where you can buy a gallon of unleaded, a Slim Jim, and a packet of legal insanity, all in one transaction. These packets were never subtle. They had branding that tried to sound soothing. Bliss, Blue Silk, Lunar Wave, but the packaging looked like someone dared a child with a box of highlighters to redesign the periodic table. Half the time, the labels were intentionally vague. Herbal incense, plant fertilizer, phone screen cleaner. Some even included instructions like, warning, not for human consumption, use as air freshener only, as if that would somehow prevent the inevitable. It's like putting do not microwave on a burrito, everyone ignores it, and someone's going to the ER. And the marketing was genius in a lawless kind of way. Cloud 9 sounds like something a yoga instructor would recommend, not something that could turn your next bathroom break into a psychedelic episode. No one was actually fooled, of course. Even the gas station attendant, let's call him Gary, because there's always a Gary, gave you that knowing look. Gary's seen it all. He rings up your Monster Energy drink, slides you a packet of Ivory Wave, and quietly asks if you want a receipt for garden supplies. It's all very above board, as long as no one uses the word drug. But here's the wild part. At this point in time, most of these products were perfectly legal. State and federal lawmakers couldn't keep up with the chemists, who changed the formulas faster than politicians could ban them. So you had a revolving door of new bath salts on the shelf every week. Some regulars started collecting them like baseball cards. Others just bought whatever was on sale, which, in hindsight, is probably not the strategy you want when experimenting with psychoactive chemicals. If you're wondering who bought these, the answer is everybody, or at least everybody's cousin. High school kids looking to get weird without getting expelled, midlife crisis dads who'd been watching too much cable news, and that one guy in jean shorts who swore he was just trying to relax. There was no typical user profile, except that everyone pretended they'd never heard of bath salts if the police were asking. The scene at a Florida gas station during the epidemic was like a live-action version of Choose Your Own Adventure, except all the endings involved someone calling poison control. Sometimes you'd see people nervously asking for Cloud 9, eyes darting like they were buying contraband, even though the stuff was displayed right next to the Snickers bars. Other times someone would buy 3 packets, a lottery ticket, and a corn dog, and walk out as if they were heading to a PTA meeting. Meanwhile, the owners tried to play innocent. "We just sell what the distributor brings us," they'd say, hands raised, as if they had no idea the entire soccer team was now convinced they could hear colors. But behind the scenes, everyone knew what was up. Some stores started moving the bath salts under the counter, not to discourage sales, but to build mystique. Nothing says exclusive like a substance you have to ask for in hushed tones. In retrospect, the gas station wasn't just a store, it was an ecosystem. A bizarre crossroads of suburban moms, late-night truckers, curious teens, and chemists one step ahead of the law. If you could survive buying gas station sushi, you could survive anything, including the zombie drug panic. So, next time you walk into a gas station and see a shelf of totally normal products, just remember, in 2011 Florida, the weirdest stuff was always up for grabs, as long as you were willing to pretend you didn't see the warning label. You know it's getting real when the news calls something a zombie outbreak. TV anchors look terrified. Newspapers run with front-page stories about people biting faces, screaming about the apocalypse, and Florida man is trending on Twitter for all the wrong reasons. Suddenly, everyone is locking their doors at 2 in the afternoon. The whole thing started quietly. A weird incident here, a hospital admission there, some muttered rumors about new drugs on the street. But all it took was one jaw-dropping headline: Miami face eater attacks homeless man, and suddenly, panic was everywhere. By the time the story had bounced from cable news to Twitter to your aunt's Facebook feed, it had snowballed into full-blown apocalypse prep mode. News helicopters circled overhead. Breathless reporters clutched microphones like talismans. And all of America seemed to stare in fascinated horror at Florida, as if it had just become ground zero for the end times. Let's take a moment to appreciate the media's special talent for turning chaos into primetime entertainment. Anchors spoke in hushed tones about the dangerous new drug sweeping the Sunshine State. Expert panels speculated about whether humanity was on the verge of a real-life Walking Dead scenario. News tickers flashed warnings. Bath salts, are you safe? It didn't matter that nobody really knew what was going on. The vibe was clear. Stock up on bottled water, canned beans, and maybe a cricket bat, just in case. And then the face-eating stories started multiplying. If you believed the headlines, half of Florida was out there gnawing on traffic cones, biting strangers, and howling at the moon. It didn't matter that toxicology reports rarely confirmed bath salts. Once the zombie narrative had legs, it ran fast. Reporters staked out hospital ERs hoping for footage of someone doing the crab walk in a hospital gown. Morning shows brought on drug experts who looked suspiciously like the guy who fixes your air conditioner. Daytime TV hosts shared tips for surviving a zombie encounter, as if a little common sense would help if your neighbor started chewing the mailbox. Modern life in Florida became a surreal, choose-your-own-adventure book, written by Stephen King and edited by TMZ. Everyone had a story. A friend of a cousin's ex saw someone chase a shopping cart through the Winn-Dixie parking lot. Your neighbor swore he heard moaning from the storm drain. Conspiracy forums debated whether it was bath salts, government mind control, or just a bad run of Mercury in retrograde. Social media made things worse. Twitter, Facebook, and the endless scroll of 24-hour news amplified every rumor. If you posted about seeing someone act weird, congratulations. You were tomorrow's headline. Suddenly, everyone with a camera phone was an amateur apocalypse reporter. And just like that, the lines between reality, myth, and meme completely dissolved. One night you're watching the local news, and the anchor, with perfect sincerity, says, "Stay safe out there," as if you might get bitten during your next run to Publix. Next thing you know, you're texting your group chat. If I don't reply, assume the zombies got me. Even perfectly. Ordinary weirdness, a neighbor yelling at a raccoon, someone walking barefoot on the median became potential evidence of the zombie outbreak. You start double-checking your locks, not for burglars, but just in case your mailman goes full Romero after lunch. The best part, nobody really knew what to do. Should you buy more batteries, barricade the windows, or just wait for the next press conference, where a local sheriff would solemnly reassure everyone that, no, there wasn't actually an undead epidemic, just a lot of very confused people and some regrettable Google searches. Of course, by then, the panic had done its work. Even if you didn't believe in zombies, you definitely kept a wary eye on anyone with a glazed look and powdered sugar on their nose. That's the power of the panic button. One wild headline, a few viral tweets, and suddenly everyone's living in a world where, for a few wild weeks, the impossible feels genuinely possible. Sleep tight, and maybe keep a flashlight under the pillow just in case the 11 o'clock news is actually right this time. June 2012. The case that made bath salts a household phrase. One man, one highway overpass, one completely bewildered homeless guy, and a flurry of police sirens. It's the story that defined the epidemic, even though, spoiler alert, the toxicology report says otherwise. But never let facts get in the way of a good panic. This is how it begins. It's just another muggy Miami afternoon. The kind where your sweat sweats, traffic is crawling, and the air shimmers with that strange energy Florida specializes in. Equal parts beach party and natural disaster. Suddenly, news breaks. A man is found, naked, attacking another man beneath the MacArthur Causeway. Witnesses stare in shock as the story unfolds, and soon details start to spread, fast and loose, like an unrestrained game of telephone at a sleep-deprived summer camp. Sirens blare, helicopters circle, and half the city tunes in for updates. half glued to the spectacle, half peeking out their windows to see if the zombie apocalypse has made it to their block yet. When police finally arrive and shout for the attacker to stop, he reportedly turns, growls, and continues his gruesome business. Only after being shot multiple times does he stop. The details, as the news tells them, are not just shocking, but nightmare fuel. A man biting and mauling another's face in broad daylight, by the side of the highway, with witnesses and iPhones aplenty. By the time the first news van screeches to a halt, the headlines have already written themselves. Zombie attack in Miami. Within hours, the story is everywhere. TV anchors look like they're broadcasting from a bunker. Hashtags explode. Jekse zombie apocalypse. Jekse bath salts. Ejects only in Florida. Overnight, the phrase Miami face eater becomes a household term, nestled somewhere between hurricane warning and do we have enough bottled water? Even your grandma, who thinks emojis are the work of the devil, is texting to ask if you're staying away from those drugs. Naturally, the bath salts theory rushes in to fill the gap. It must be the zombie drug, scream the headlines, and suddenly every parent in America is demanding new locks, and no one can look at Epsom salts the same way again. Never mind that the toxicology report later finds no bath salts in the man's system, just some cannabis, because it's Florida, and sometimes people are just deeply, deeply weird without chemical encouragement. That fact is barely a speed bump for the media. The zombie train has already left the station. And here's where the legend grows. Every detail is repeated, exaggerated, and retold. The internet does its thing. Memes sprout like mushrooms after a rainstorm. News programs air expert after expert, all with furrowed brows and the same PowerPoint slide labeled synthetic drugs. Late-night hosts turn it into punchlines, but the city itself holds its breath. For weeks, every strange noise after dark, every guy seen running barefoot down Biscayne Boulevard, becomes a potential outbreak. Local police field more calls about suspicious activity than ever before. Gas station clerks start eyeing customers with a new kind of suspicion. Emergency rooms brace for a wave of bite victims and wild claims. In the grand tradition of Florida, reality and legend collide at high speed. Did the Miami face eater start the zombie drug panic, or did it just give a name and a face, pun absolutely intended, to a rising wave of anxiety about drugs, strangers, and the unpredictable weirdness of modern life? The truth, as always, is murkier than the water in a roadside canal. But one thing is certain. For a hot, wild summer, Miami became the set of America's strangest, most unsettling viral story. One where the actual facts never stood a chance against the terror of the unknown. And that's how a single, grisly afternoon changed a city's reputation, a nation's bedtime rituals, and the price of bath products everywhere, only in Florida. Imagine trying to get a good night's rest when every other news story is about people losing their minds and eating mailboxes. Sleep hygiene tips go right out the window. White noise. Try police helicopters. Weighted blanket. More like heavy existential dread. Every night as dusk falls over Florida, you try to convince yourself that everything's fine. Sure, earlier today a guy tried to wrestle a palm tree. The local news anchor has that someone just whispered, "Apocalypse," in my ear. Look, and your neighborhood group chat is swapping survival tips. But you're going to bed. You're an adult. You're going to rise above the panic, right after double-checking that you locked the sliding glass door and the regular door, and maybe shoving a dresser in front of both, just for fun. It's a struggle. The usual sleep strategies, hot tea, calming music, breathing exercises suddenly seem inadequate when the outside world feels like it's auditioning for a low-budget horror film. You lie in the dark and try to focus on your breathing, but instead, you start hearing noises. Is that the AC clicking on? Or is someone gnawing on the recycling bin again? Was that a cat on the fence? Or your neighbor practicing for the next zombie parade? Maybe you try a podcast, something soothing, but even the hosts sound anxious. Tonight's meditation is for finding inner peace if you live in a state where the mailman hasn't tried to bite anyone. You switch to rain sounds, but that only reminds you that the last rainstorm knocked out the power for 4 hours, and half the neighborhood spent the evening playing flashlight charades and peeking nervously through the blinds. Let's not forget the joys of social media before bed. Your last scroll reveals new headlines. Bath salts blamed for mysterious behavior in grocery store parking lot. Miami police increase patrols amid zombie drug panic. You know you should put the phone down, but your brain insists. One more update, just in case the CDC is about to issue a guide for zombie-proofing your house. You close your eyes, but instead of counting sheep, you're counting possible escape routes. Meanwhile, the sounds outside are relentless. Florida's night is never quiet. Crickets, frogs, a random peacock, and, just your luck, a neighbor's dog who has decided to take up barking as a form of performance art. Then there's the occasional helicopter, which makes you wonder if they're looking for someone, or just adding to the ambiance. You wrap yourself tighter in the blanket, which now feels less like comfort and more like a protective cocoon against existential threats. Of course, the heat doesn't help. Your room is 2 degrees above comfortable, but you refuse to open a window because you saw a story about someone leaping through one under the influence. You try to calm your nerves. Statistically, you are much more likely to be struck by lightning, bitten by a mosquito, or startled by your own reflection at 3 a.m. than you are to be attacked by a zombie. Still, you lie awake, listening, waiting, wishing you could trade all the anxiety for just one boring night of insomnia. Even dreams aren't safe. If you do manage to nod off, your subconscious treats you to a highlight reel of every strange headline, mashed up with your own personal anxieties. Suddenly you're being chased through a Publix by a crowd of sleep-deprived neighbors wielding spatulas and caution tape. You try to run, but your legs won't move. Classic. By sunrise, you're exhausted and slightly relieved to see the world is still mostly normal. No bite marks, no missing mailboxes, just a mild case of sleep deprivation and a strong craving for coffee. You survived another night in the state of panic, and with any luck, tomorrow's headline will be something boring, like a record-breaking zucchini, or a cat that looks like Abraham Lincoln. But until then, good luck, sleeping. At least the police helicopter makes a decent lullaby. Time for the fun part, pharmacology. Bath salts are basically what happens when a chemistry major drops out, discovers eBay, and decides to cause chaos. Stimulants, hallucinations, paranoia, superhuman strength, and the overwhelming urge to shout at a palm tree. Let's break it down, gently. Synthetic cathinones, the technical term for most bath salts, are distant chemical cousins of the cat plant, which is traditionally chewed in East Africa for a light buzz and a chance to ignore your daily problems. But here's the twist. Once this chemistry project passes through a couple of very entrepreneurial hands and lands in your local gas station, it's no longer the chill cousin at the family reunion. It's the weird uncle who thinks karaoke is a competitive sport. Once ingested, snorted, swallowed, smoked, or, in one legendary Florida story, reportedly sprinkled on toast. Don't try this at home. These drugs kick your nervous system into overdrive, Imagine if you drank 5 energy drinks, a triple espresso, and a little bit of existential terror. Your heart pounds, your thoughts race. Your teeth, which weren't doing anything wrong, suddenly feel like they want to escape. That's the start. The big problem is unpredictability. Bath salts aren't a single chemical, but a chaotic cocktail. You might get mephedrone, methylone, MDPV, or a bonus round of something no one has named yet. Even the people making them sometimes lose track. Each batch is like the world's worst box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, but you can almost guarantee it's not going to be pleasant. The effects range from mild, talkative, energetic, maybe feeling like you could finally organize your sock drawer, to the kind of wild where you're convinced you can communicate with garden ornaments. There's the famous paranoia, that creeping feeling that someone, somewhere, is watching you, judging your outfit, and maybe planning to challenge you to a wrestling match. Then there's the muscle tension and the uncontrollable urge to pace, dance, or perform dramatic readings to your potted plants. Of course, for some, the experience escalates to hallucinations. Shadows move, colors sing. Your own reflection looks at you funny. Suddenly, street signs have deep personal significance, and you feel compelled to share your theories with everyone in the vicinity. Occasionally, bath salts users are struck by a conviction that clothing is optional, and so is common sense. Cue the news reports. One of the scarier aspects is excited delirium. This is where superhuman strength, extreme agitation, and sometimes total insensitivity to pain appear. Imagine your body acting like it's possessed by a caffeinated superhero, while your brain runs around the control room, smashing every button labeled panic. Police, paramedics, and emergency room staff all developed a kind of sixth sense for spotting a bath salts user. Wide eyes, frantic energy, and an intense fascination with absolutely nothing. And then there's the crash. After the storm of energy, confusion, and possibly interpretive dance with shrubbery comes the aftermath. Exhaustion, depression, confusion, and sometimes the realization that you've been talking to a mailbox for 2 hours. This is the part no one puts on the packaging. All of this is made worse by how little anyone actually knows about what's in a given packet. There's no FDA label, no quality control, just a cheerful, not for human consumption warning that everyone ignores. The only consistency is inconsistency. You can't dose safely because there is no safe. Even the chemists who study these things mostly just shake their heads, file another report, and hope next week's designer drug isn't even weirder. So, to sum up, bath salts scramble the brain, hijack the body, and leave everyone, including the user, deeply confused. The science says it all. Don't mess with mystery powders from a gas station shelf, unless, of course, you really want to end up in next week's Florida Man segment. In which case, good luck explaining that to your grandkids. Suddenly, the neighborhood Facebook page is ablaze. Sightings of suspicious activity triple. Everyone's got a theory. Some people are installing security cameras. Others are just adopting more cats as a defense system. It starts out innocently enough. A post about a strange figure seen jogging at 11:30 p.m., shirtless, shoeless, and possibly arguing with a recycling bin. Within minutes, the thread explodes. Someone's Aunt Linda posts a blurry Ring doorbell clip of a raccoon. "Does this look rabid to anyone?" she asks, earning 23 comments and a spirited debate about whether rabies can make raccoons walk upright and check for packages. Next thing you know, Every flicker of movement on a driveway camera gets uploaded for forensic analysis. Neighbors become amateur detectives, examining freeze frames and arguing about whether that shadow behind the trash can is a stray cat, a palm frond, or something more sinister. Every ding from a security app now means scrolling through footage of night joggers, delivery drivers, or just the local iguana making its evening rounds. But logic isn't welcome here. Panic is much more fun. Then the rumors start. Carol at the end of the street swears she heard zombie groans coming from the storm drain. A guy 3 doors down claims he saw someone gnawing on a garden hose, but admits he forgot his glasses. Now, the HOA president is calling an emergency meeting, not about the uncut lawns or the mailbox that's been leaning for 3 years, but about the new threat in our midst. He emails out a list of zombie preparedness tips, copied directly from a cable news segment. Pet owners aren't immune. Dogs bark at the wind and cats vanish under the sofa. Parrots start picking up phrases like, "lock the door," and stranger, "danger." There's a brief but fierce debate over whether you can train a flock of peacocks as a home security system. One neighbor tries to form a night patrol, but it collapses after half the volunteers are grounded by their spouses, and the rest can't agree on whether to bring pool noodles or tennis rackets for self-defense. The Facebook page itself becomes a battleground. Half the neighborhood is convinced they're under siege. The other half is just enjoying the spectacle, popping popcorn as they watch the comment count rise. People who haven't posted in years suddenly re-emerge, offering cryptic advice or sharing links to articles with titles like 10 Sure Signs Your Neighbor is a Zombie. Occasionally, someone tries to inject reason. Guys, it was just a guy looking for his lost cat. But reason gets 10 sad face reacts and is quickly buried under gifs of The Walking Dead. Even normal behavior gets reinterpreted through the lens of paranoia. A teenager skateboarding at dusk is now scouting houses for the undead. The mail carrier, always cheerful, is suddenly too cheerful, and therefore suspicious. The power flickers during a thunderstorm, and it's not just a weather issue. It's the first sign. You haven't seen your neighbor in a week? They're probably out of town, or more likely in someone's basement, learning to control their zombie urges. The neighborhood's usual priorities, fence repairs, pool rules, lost dogs, are all put on hold. This week, it's all about defensive strategies. Someone suggests digging a moat, another floats the idea of a buddy system, and a third proposes zombie drill Wednesdays, to be held right after yoga. The local handyman suddenly has a 6-week waiting list for anyone wanting motion lights or bite-proof screen doors. And through it all, the real winner is the neighborhood cat population, now enjoying endless treats and cuddles as nervous residents stock up on emotional support animals. After all, everyone knows, zombies hate cats, or at least that's what Cheryl posted, and no one's dared to argue. In the end, the neighborhood doesn't fall to the zombies. It falls to exhaustion, group paranoia, and an all-time high in Facebook notifications. But hey, if togetherness counts for anything, nothing brings people together like the shared belief that the next suspicious person might just be someone looking for their lost shoe, or possibly their last shred of dignity. For Florida's police, the epidemic is a lesson in patience, improvisation, and the art of chasing someone who thinks they're being pursued by invisible iguanas. Taser sales skyrocket. Training manuals grow thicker. Nobody's getting hazard pay for zombie bites. Let's set the scene. It's a sticky Tuesday afternoon, and Officer Jenkins is just trying to finish his third coffee when the radio crackles with a code he's never heard before. Possible bath salts incident, Maine and 5th. Subject is naked and climbing a street. Sign. You'd think this was a prank call if it weren't for the fact that, by 2012, this sort of thing was practically a daily occurrence in Florida. Law enforcement had already seen their fair share of Florida man moments, people robbing banks with live alligators, traffic stops involving moonshine and medieval weaponry, but nothing quite prepared them for the full-contact improv theater of the bath salts era. The problem was there was no predicting what each encounter would bring. One minute, you're talking to a person convinced their skin is made of marshmallows. The next, you're trying to keep a suspect from running headfirst into a canal while screaming, "The iguanas are back and they want my pants." Departments scrambled to adapt. The usual protocols? Out the window. Every officer became a student of human psychology, crisis negotiation, and sometimes interpretive dance. Training sessions now included lines like, "When attempting to subdue a suspect who believes he is a time-traveling raccoon, try to avoid sudden movements." Rookie officers who'd once hoped for car chases and donuts instead found themselves locked in a standoff with someone wielding a pool noodle as a weapon, demanding to speak to the mayor of the moon. Police cruisers became mobile command centers for chaos. The back seat, normally reserved for rowdy drunks or the occasional shoplifter, now had to be bite-resistant, waterproof, and equipped with towels, just in case someone decided to reenact a scene from Jaws. Taser cartridges were ordered by the pallet. Officers swapped tips on which uniforms best resisted unusual stains. And then there was the paperwork. Every incident had to be reported in painstaking detail. Subject removed traffic cone from head, shouted, "I am the king now," and fled into neighbor's koi pond. The district attorney's office, flooded with bizarre case files, began a betting pool on the week's weirdest arrest. The usual charges, trespassing, disorderly conduct, public intoxication, suddenly seemed quaint. Community outreach took on a new urgency. Officers visited schools and PTA meetings to explain, as calmly as possible, that no, there was not a zombie apocalypse, and yes, the police were doing their best to keep everyone safe. "Just call if you see something strange," they'd say, knowing full well that strange now covered about 40% of all activity in the state. Dispatchers learned to keep a straight face as they took calls ranging from "my neighbor is howling at the sun" to "there's a man attempting to marry the stop sign outside my house." Of course, law enforcement officers are human too. Gallows humor became the only way to cope. Jokes about zombie repellent and bath salt badges circulated the station. There were unofficial awards for the best weird arrest of the month. Veteran officers swapped stories in the break room. "You think you had it bad? Last night, I had to talk down a guy wearing rollerblades and a Darth Vader helmet, shouting about lizard conspiracies." And, through it all, the public watched, sometimes from a safe distance, sometimes live on YouTube. Every now and then, police and civilians would share a look, bewildered, exhausted, united in the knowledge that nobody had trained for any of this. So, next time you see a police officer in Florida with an extra-large cup of coffee and a haunted look, give them a nod of respect. Because they survived the bath salts epidemic, a time when law enforcement was less about upholding the law and more about surviving the world's strangest improv comedy, one zombie rumor at a time. Ever wonder what it was like being a gas station owner during the bath salts craze? On one hand, you're selling more plant food than ever. On the other, you're fielding calls from the local news, angry neighbors, and, occasionally, the DEA. For most station owners, business had always been about coffee, cigarettes, and trying to keep the slushy machine from exploding. But when the bath salts gold rush hit, the rules changed overnight. Suddenly, your side hustle in lottery tickets and questionable hot dogs was dwarfed by a new moneymaker. Tiny foil packets with names like Ivory Wave and Vanilla Sky stacked behind the register with all the innocent charm of a loaded mousetrap. At first, nobody asked questions. The distributor dropped off a box labeled "Not for human consumption," and you figured, hey, it's Florida. Maybe someone really is fertilizing their houseplants at 3 in the morning. The packets came with wacky designs and even wackier disclaimers: air freshener only, or do not snort, eat, smoke, inject, or look at sideways. Legally, you were covered. Morally, you started to wonder when the neighborhood PTA started side-eyeing you at stoplights. That's when the circus rolled in. Local reporters, desperate for a new angle, showed up with cameramen in tow, trying to catch a live bust. You, in your Gulf Express polo, would stand behind the counter, blinking under harsh fluorescent lights, explaining for the 10th time that you don't actually know what's inside the packet, and no, you don't recommend putting it in your bath. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, the news van blocks the pump. 3 kids are skateboarding past the ice machine, and somebody's dog is trying to break into the snack aisle. If it wasn't the media, it was the local conspiracy squad. At least once a day, someone would march in, waving a blurry printout of a headline, "Bath salts turn man into zombie," demanding you take the stuff off your shelves. Others got creative, claiming their cousin's friend's roommate had bought a packet and started speaking fluent dolphin. All you wanted was to sell gas and maybe the occasional bear claw, but suddenly you were at the epicenter of a moral panic. Then there was the law. Official-looking folks in ill-fitting suits showed up, flashing badges and business cards and asking if you knew you, could get in trouble for selling research chemicals. You'd show them the labels, not for human consumption, and try to look both innocent and deeply confused. Sometimes they'd confiscate your entire shelf stock and threaten to come back with the feds. You'd shrug, reorder, and by next week, the same distributor would arrive with a new packet, a new name, and an even more ridiculous claim about its intended use. Glass cleaner, now with extra zing. Meanwhile, you had the regulars, the truckers who stuck to black coffee, the night shift nurses who just wanted a microwave burrito, and then the new crowd, jittery-eyed young adults, sunglasses at midnight, who bought 3 packets, a Monster Energy, and a bag of pork rinds before vanishing back into the night. The security camera footage from those months could have won an award for Best Unintentional Comedy. Through it all, your job was survival. Smile politely, sell the plant food, restock the ice. Try not to ask questions when the police show up. If your store didn't burn down and your health inspector wasn't on speed dial, you were winning. But as the laws caught up, the craze fizzled. Bath salts vanished almost as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind empty display racks, new regulations, and a lingering sense of, did that really just happen? The gas station went back to its old routine: coffee spills, scratch-off drama, and the eternal mystery of why anyone would microwave a tuna sandwich at 4 a.m. You may not have become rich, but you did gain a lifetime's worth of stories. Welcome to gas station management in Florida, where normal is always just one news cycle away from extinction. How do you explain to your kids that no, their classmate didn't actually become a zombie, he just ate something called lunar wave? PTA meetings take on a whole new flavor. Parent-teacher conferences start with, "So, how's the home life?" It's a tough time to be a parent in Florida, circa 2012. For years, you've been teaching the basics. Don't talk to strangers, look both ways before crossing, and never, ever eat anything from the bottom shelf at the gas station. Now you're adding, if someone tries to eat your homework, run. There's no manual for this. The old parenting books didn't cover bath salts or what to do when your kid comes home with a story about a classmate who tried to bite the kickball. You try to keep things light, but the questions keep coming. Mom, what's a synthetic cathinone? Dad, why was the principal yelling about zombies at morning assembly? Suddenly, family movie night is less about Disney and more about reviewing Stranger Danger. Florida edition. Your bedtime stories get a rewrite. Goodnight moon, goodnight raccoons, goodnight to the neighbor, howling at the moon. Meanwhile, the school is in full crisis management mode. Teachers are exhausted. Guidance counselors are giving out stress balls like candy. The lunch lady starts serving everything in sealed containers, just in case someone tries to sprinkle vanilla sky on the mashed potatoes. The art teacher abandons papier-mâché for the semester because, frankly, nobody trusts white powder right now. PTA meetings, once about bake sales and school spirit, have turned into something resembling an emergency town hall. What's being done about these dangerous products? Should we ban backpacks? Can we get the school nurse trained in anti-zombie self-defense? There's always one parent with a stack of research printed from conspiracy forums, passing out color-coded danger charts and suggesting mandatory garlic necklaces. The hardest part? Kids are kids. Rumors and urban legends spread faster than a cold in a kindergarten class. By lunchtime, the story of one student feeling weird after gym class has become an epic tale of heroism, survival, and possible telepathy. At recess, kids play zombie tag with a little too much enthusiasm, and the new favorite insult is bath salt's brain. Meanwhile, you get texts from other parents. Did you hear about what happened in Ms. Garcia's room? Followed by a string of emojis, half of which you can't identify. Back at home, you do your best to keep the mood calm. You explain, as gently as possible, that no, zombies are not real, and that eating strange powders is a very bad idea, no matter what Jimmy's older brother says. You Google how to explain synthetic drugs to children and land on a CDC pamphlet that's both terrifying and unhelpful. You consider just moving to the woods, but remember that Florida woods come with their own set of problems, mostly involving raccoons with attitude and mosquitoes the size of Labradors. School events become high-stakes affairs. The science fair is under lockdown. Nobody trusts the homemade volcano entry. The fall festival drops the mystery grab bag booth after last year's scare. Even picture day feels tense. Say cheese and don't bite anyone. Teachers remind everyone twice a day to wash their hands, stay safe, and avoid any product labeled not for human consumption, which in Florida is surprisingly good advice in general. Through it all, you try to maintain your sense of humor and perspective. You text your friends, you swap stories at the pickup line, and you remember that, as crazy as things seem, the odds of your child turning into a zombie are still lower than the odds of them losing their backpack twice in the same week. So, you tuck your kids in, double-check the locks, and tell yourself, you survived another day of parenting in the age of bath salts. Tomorrow, with any luck, the weirdest thing you'll face is a homework assignment on the food chain, not the story of the kid who tried to become one. Bath salts ingredients read like a chemistry pop quiz from hell. methylenedioxypyrovalerone, mephedrone, and things that sound like Pokemon evolutions. Even the people selling it have no idea what's inside. You pick up a packet at a gas station and turn it over, looking for answers. The ingredient list is either blank, full of scientific terms you haven't seen since you flunked high school chemistry, or simply says, "For novelty, use only." Sometimes there's a sticker slapped over the fine print, just to add a little mystery. The one consistent ingredient is confusion. Synthetic cathinones are the main players: mephedrone, methylone, MDPV, and a rotating cast of cousins and unpronounceable analogs. On paper, these are all chemical tweaks of the same basic molecule, each one a frantic attempt to stay a step ahead of lawmakers and the DEA. The process is like a never-ending game of cat and mouse, if the cat was a slightly panicked government scientist, and the mouse was an over-caffeinated chemistry major with a label maker. The real kicker is, there's no guarantee you're actually getting what's listed. You might get pure MDPV, you might get a hodgepodge of leftover chemicals, or you might get baking soda and hope. Sometimes the same brand would change formulas from week to week. One week, Ivory Wave might turn you into a conspiracy theorist with a fondness for mailbox wrestling. Next week, it just gives you a headache and a strong urge to alphabetize your sock drawer. To add to the chaos, there are often bonus ingredients, fillers, cutting agents, and whatever else was lying around in the lab, which is often just a garage with a fan and a faint smell of burnt popcorn. Some packets are laced with caffeine, lidocaine, or, in one memorable case, actual Epsom salts. Yes, once in a while, someone just wanted a bath. What a concept. Reading the back of these packets is like decoding an ancient scroll written in a combination of Latin, emojis, and threatening legalese. Some manufacturers go for plausible deniability, contains no banned substances at time of packaging. Others are more creative, promising herbal energizers and aromatic potpourri, as if you've stumbled into a mildly illegal day spa. Of course, none of this stops the determined thrill seeker. If anything, the uncertainty is half the appeal, like buying a mystery box, except the prize is possible hallucinations and a strong desire to sing karaoke to your neighbor's shrubbery. And when people ended up in the ER, doctors were left just as confused, hunched over toxicology reports and shaking their heads at lists of chemicals with more syllables than Scrabble tiles. Even gas station clerks and small business owners, now moonlighting as accidental pharmacists, were in the dark. "Do you know what's in this?" became the most asked question. Right after, "Is the bathroom key still attached to the hubcap?" Clerks would shrug, point at the warning label, "Not for human consumption," and offer to sell you a lottery ticket as a consolation prize. For the scientists, it was a nightmare. Labs around the country scrambled to keep up, developing new tests just to figure out what was in the latest blend. Law enforcement sent out bulletins. New synthetic variant circulating, effects unpredictable, side effects may include confusion, paranoia, and an unhealthy obsession with traffic cones. By the time one substance was banned, 10 more were ready to take its place, each one just chemically different enough to skirt the law. So what's actually in bath salts? Sometimes not even the people making them can say for sure. The ingredient list might as well read, "Good luck." It's chemistry roulette with a side of plausible deniability and a dash of Florida man energy. If you're ever tempted to read a bath salts label, just remember, When the ingredient list looks like it was written by a mad scientist with a grudge against vowels, maybe it's best to stick to actual bath products. At least then, the weirdest thing that might happen is you smell like lavender for a week. And in Florida, that's practically normal. The panic spawns legends overnight. Someone's uncle swears he saw a guy running 40 miles per hour. A lady in a trailer park claims she fended off a zombie with nothing but a flip-flop and faith. Swamp monsters now have competition. It doesn't take long for stories to spread in Florida. Maybe it's the heat, maybe it's the humidity, or maybe it's just the alligators eavesdropping and passing rumors downstream. Suddenly, every mosquito-bitten county has its own I survived the zombie night tale. It starts small. A neighbor's cousin's hairdresser saw a shadowy figure leap over a 6-foot fence with the strength of 3 raccoons. Next thing you know, the whole block is swapping theories about bath salts, government experiments, and why Jerry's above-ground pool keeps bubbling after dark. The urban legends get creative. There's the classic, I heard about a guy who ate a whole mailbox in one bite and didn't even burp. Someone at the diner swears they witnessed a woman bark at a squirrel until it ran away, and then, so the story goes, the squirrel came back with friends. Tales multiply like love bugs after a rainstorm. Children dare each other to go outside after sunset, and parents develop a sudden interest in learning how to build homemade garlic necklaces, just in case. And then there's the lore unique to Florida. Old-timers who remember the real weird years, no one can quite agree on when those started, gather on porches and swap stories about creatures in the swamps. Skunk Ape, Florida's own Bigfoot, suddenly finds himself competing for headlines with a new breed of monster, the half-naked, sunburned, bath salts-fueled zombie. Used to be you just had to watch for gators, they'll mutter. Now you gotta watch for folks biting stop signs. The rumors become folklore in record time. Someone draws up a zombie sighting map and posts it at the local hardware store. The dots multiply, under the causeway, behind the Waffle House, next to the elementary school parking lot. A local handyman becomes an overnight legend after allegedly chasing off a zombie with nothing but a pressure washer and a bag of rock salt. Did it happen? Doesn't matter. The story has better legs than a swamp deer. You start seeing new warnings pop up. Beware the full moon, zombie activity increases. It's unclear if this is true, but it's a great excuse for your neighbor to host a moonlight barbecue where the only thing getting bitten is a sausage. Local churches add blessings for protection to their weekly services. The morning radio hosts can barely get through the traffic report without tossing in a joke about zombie-proofing your car or keeping a loaf of day-old Cuban bread on the dashboard as a talisman. As the weeks go by, the stories escalate. One kid claims his aunt's friend saw a man swimming through a retention pond faster than a bass boat. Another swears their dad's fishing buddy fought off a horde of living dead by playing Jimmy Buffett songs at full volume. Turns out, zombies really hate Margaritaville. Fact-checking is useless. The more you deny it, the wilder the stories become. Eventually, the urban legends reach full myth status. There's talk of the Swamp Whisperer, a mysterious figure said to roam the Everglades at night, keeping peace between the gators, the skunk apes, and the newly arrived zombie population. If you listen close, you might hear his voice, usually telling you to go back inside and lock your door. Through it all, the line between truth, half-truth, and I swear on my grandma's life, completely disappears. In Florida, the strange is always just a rumor away from being gospel. So next time you hear a wild tale about the bath salts era, zombies, supernatural strength, mailbox devourers. Just smile, nod, and remember, sometimes reality can't keep up with the legend. And in the Sunshine State, the legend is always one step ahead, running, barefoot, at 40 miles per hour. If you worked at an ER in Florida during 2012, you earned every penny. Doctors faced people convinced they were on fire, being chased by ghosts, or could suddenly speak fluent dolphin. Night shifts got weird, fast. Let's set the scene. It's 2 a.m. in the ER. The AC is set to meat locker. The fluorescent lights never blink, and the only thing thicker than the tension is the ever-present scent of hospital-grade disinfectant. You're a nurse, prepping IVs and wondering how much caffeine is safe for human consumption. The front doors slide open, and in comes the latest case, barefoot, bug-eyed, and clutching a traffic cone like it's a family heirloom. Bath salts have arrived. Medical charts start reading like plot lines from a fever dream. Patient reports being followed by invisible iguanas. Attempted to wrestle a vending machine. Claims to be a time traveler from the lost city of Atlantis. Insists on being addressed as Your Majesty. Triage becomes a triathlon of improvisation. One doctor's gently explaining that no, your hands are not melting. Another is fending off someone convinced the IV pole is out to get them. The staff develop their own shorthand. Code blue means cardiac arrest. Code bath salts means bring extra restraints and maybe a translator who speaks dolphin. Security guards, normally tasked with breaking up parking lot squabbles, now run impromptu marathons through hallways, dodging gurneys and dodging patients who suddenly believe they have Olympic sprinting abilities. Every shift feels like a new episode of America's Got Bizarre Talent. The unpredictability is relentless. Some patients arrive agitated, bouncing from wall to wall like human pinballs. Others are suddenly convinced they're in a musical, serenading the entire ER with improvised songs about the ceiling tiles. Occasionally, someone is completely calm, right up until they remember the imaginary bees in their hair. The only thing you can count on is that nothing can be counted on. It's not just the patients. Their friends and family show up in various states of confusion and panic. One dad tries to explain that his son was just acting a little odd before he started reciting the Gettysburg Address backwards. Moms weep, siblings film everything on their phones, and somewhere in the chaos, the vending machine eats another $5 bill. It's Florida, after all. Doctors and nurses become part-time detectives, part-time counselors, and full-time miracle workers. There are frantic calls to poison control. Toxicology screens are ordered, and every result seems to reveal a new variant of synthetic mystery. No one's sure if the antidote is Ativan, Gatorade, or just a quiet room with no windows. Every case is a roll of the dice. Sometimes the situations veer from tragic to hilarious. One patient, convinced he's turning into a werewolf, starts howling at the moon inside, beneath a flickering fluorescent bulb. Another tries to order pizza using the hospital intercom. A third asks if the doctors can turn the gravity back on. You learn not to flinch when someone declares their new legal name is Sir Bites-a-Lot. You just smile, nod, and keep the bite guard within reach. And through it all, the ER staff soldier on, tired but unbroken, with gallows humor and an endless supply of coffee. They swap stories in the break room, each more unbelievable than the last, comforted by the knowledge that if anyone doubts them, all they have to do is work one night shift in Florida. So the next time you're drifting off, grateful for a drama-free evening, spare a thought for the real-world frontliners. They survived the bath salts epidemic, the zombie rumors, and the parade of human oddity. If anyone deserves hazard pay and maybe a month in a soundproof spa, it's them. Local lawmakers scramble to fix the epidemic. New laws appear overnight, banning anything that looks, smells, or sounds like bath salts. Some cities start banning things just to be safe, like powdered donuts and bath bombs. It's a familiar sight. The city council chamber packed, the fluorescent, lights humming, and half the room clutching copies of last night's zombie headline. Elected officials, who 6 months ago were mostly concerned with potholes and crabgrass, suddenly discover a new calling: public safety crusaders. Someone clears their throat and solemnly declares, no child should ever be exposed to the dangers of, checks notes, Cloud 9, white lightning, or, yes, even aroma crystals. The legislative panic sets in. If it's sold in a gas station, if it comes in a packet, or if its ingredients have more than 3 syllables, it's getting banned. If it fizzes, foams, or has a dolphin on the label, we're taking action, declares the mayor, pounding the table for effect. Committees are formed. Hearings are held. Some poor city attorney is asked to draft a definition of suspicious powder that doesn't also include Bisquick or baby formula. Soon the bans start rolling out. It doesn't matter that no one really knows what's in the bath salts, or that next week's batch will have a brand new name and a completely different chemical formula. The important thing is action. Someone proposes a 3 strikes rule for any product with the words "not for human consumption" on the label. Another wants to fingerprint anyone who buys a loofah, just in case. The chaos spreads upward. State lawmakers get involved. The legislature spends an entire afternoon debating the merits of various synthetic cathinone analogs, most of which sound like rejected Star Wars characters. One senator waves around a packet labeled Lunar Wave and asks, in all seriousness, if this will turn people into werewolves. No one laughs. It's not that kind of year. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies scramble to keep up. Each new ban means clearing out another round of suspicious-looking products, and the gas station owners are caught in the middle, shuffling their inventory around like a shell game. One day, bath salts are banned. The next, it's incense. By Friday, half the snack aisle is under suspicion. Rumors spread that powdered donuts might be next. The Dunkin' Donuts staff form a union, just in case. The real winners in all of this are the lobbyists and consultants, suddenly in high demand. Companies that once sold nothing but hand sanitizer are now running seminars on regulatory compliance for novelty bath additives. Politicians rush to sponsor bills with catchy names: the Keep Florida Safe Act, the No More Zombie Powder Law, the Ban First, Ask Questions Later initiative. If a law has an acronym, it passes faster. In the suburbs, parents breathe a little easier for about 12 minutes. Then the local news runs a story about teenagers snorting pixie sticks as a joke, and the cycle starts all over again. Neighborhoods are left with a patchwork of bans. In one zip code, bubble bath is contraband. In the next, all powdered drink mixes have to be locked in a display case. And, as always, the people who actually make the bath salts are 2 steps ahead. New products with new names hit the shelves before the ink on the old law is dry. Now introducing Foamy Fun Crystals for external use only. The label is different, but everyone knows the drill. Through it all, politicians hold press conferences, shaking hands and taking credit for solving the crisis, while reporters ask tough questions like, Will Epsom salts ever be safe again? And what about Mrs. Baker's famous sugar cookies? The only thing more unpredictable than synthetic drugs is the speed at which lawmakers can try to ban them. So, if you ever find yourself in a Florida City Council meeting in 2012, hold tight to your powdered donuts, your bath bombs, and your sense of humor. Because in the age of panic, everything is guilty until proven delicious. If you slap not for human consumption on something, it's like telling a toddler don't touch. Bath salts, incense, plant food, phone cleaner, all code for try at your own risk. The loophole becomes legendary. It's a loophole so wide you could drive a monster truck through it. In theory, the warning is there to protect you, and more importantly, the gas station clerk's legal standing. In reality, it's about as effective as the wet paint sign at a middle school. The more you warn people not to do something, the more their brains insist on doing it, especially if it's in a neon packet. Costs $14.99 and sits right next to the 2-for-1 beef jerky. In the early 2010s, Florida's gas stations and head shops became temples of plausible deniability. You walk up to the counter and see packets labeled aromatic potpourri, not for human consumption, as if there's a secret society of people out there, sitting at home, sniffing sachets and rating them on Yelp. Next to it, herbal incense, not for human consumption. A row over plant food, not for human consumption. At this point, it starts to feel like a riddle. What do you call something you definitely shouldn't eat, but everyone absolutely will? The phrase itself becomes a joke, a challenge, a wink. The kids know it. The adults know it. Even the clerk, rolling his eyes at the register, knows it. It's the ultimate anti-advertisement. When a warning label is the only thing standing between civilization and chaos, you start to realize why the Florida man archetype exists. You have to appreciate the creativity. Manufacturers churn out packet after packet with new names and more elaborate, not for human consumption disclaimers. Some get poetic, not for human, animal, or extraterrestrial use. Others are snarky. Absolutely, positively, never, ever put this in your mouth. The more they protest, the more everyone suspects it's exactly what you're supposed to do. It's the forbidden fruit in a foil pouch. Of course, the government tries to step in. Lawmakers draft emergency bans on anything that smells suspicious, but the products just come back with slightly tweaked ingredients and a fresh label. The warning stays the same, but now it's printed in Comic Sans or framed in gold leaf. Some even add helpful suggestions. Not for human consumption. Also, not for baths. Not for cars, windows, or wallpaper. Honestly, just leave it in the packet and stare at it. Compliance, but make it fashion. Meanwhile, the urban legends grow. There's the story about the guy who actually used the stuff as air freshener and ended up with a living room that smelled like regret and confusion. Or the old-timer who sprinkled it on his ficus and spent the next 3 days explaining to his neighbors why the plant was suddenly hosting a rave. Everyone claims to know someone who totally followed the directions and still ended up in the ER. The not for human consumption loophole becomes a cultural touchstone. Kids start using the phrase as a comeback. Did you do your homework? Sorry, Mom, not for human consumption. It shows up on t-shirts, memes, even as the punchline for late-night comedians. By the end of the panic, the words have lost all meaning, just another entry in the long list of instructions nobody reads. And yet, in a way, it works. The packets disappear almost as fast as they appear. As soon as one is banned, another shows up, slightly rebranded and ready for round 2. Somewhere out there, a gas station clerk is still selling plant food to someone who winks and asks for a receipt, just in case. So next time you see a label screaming not for human consumption, take it with a grain of salt, or, better yet, take nothing at all. In the great saga of bath salts, the warning was never the deterrent. It was just a punchline waiting to happen. Memes, rumors, and Facebook posts race ahead of facts. Zombie outbreak hashtags spread faster than the actual drug. Your aunt now forwards you conspiracy theories about bath salts, lizard people, and the weather. It starts out harmless enough. A funny tweet here, a local news link there. But social media is built for escalation. The second a wild headline drops, man bites mailbox in alleged bath salts frenzy, it's screenshotted, shared, and transformed into a meme before the ink even dries. By lunchtime, your feed is clogged with photoshopped images of Florida-shaped zombies, and the phrase, "stay safe out there," is suddenly less of a pleasantry and more of an honest wish for survival. Facebook groups go into overdrive. Your neighborhood page, usually a quiet stream of lost dog posts and complaints about garbage pickup, is now a non-stop scroll of suspicious sightings and links to YouTube videos with titles like 5 Signs You're Living Next Door to a Zombie. Number 3 will shock you. Comment sections fill up with people swapping survival tips, stockpiling pool noodles, and debating whether a trampoline is a viable escape route. Someone's always got an inside source at the hospital, and every story is somehow more dramatic than the last. Instagram gets in on the action too. Before you know it, everyone's posting stories. If I don't reply to your DMs, assume the zombies got me. Teenagers stage fake zombie runs through the backyard for TikTok, their parents quietly losing years off their lives as the like count climbs. Snapchat filters launch an entire series devoted to bath salt chic, complete with red eyes, jittery hands, and the faint outline of a traffic cone in the background. And then there's Twitter, where panic is an art form. Hashtags like Jewish bath salts zombie, June only in Florida, and hide your mailboxes trend for days. Self-proclaimed experts offer real-time updates. Breaking. Swamp full of zombies seen outside Gainesville, more at 11. Skeptics and true believers collide in threads that spiral into philosophical debates about whether this is the actual apocalypse or just another Tuesday. Meanwhile, your phone is blowing up with forwarded messages. Your aunt, who once thought the internet was a government trick, now sends hourly alerts. Did you hear they're putting bath salts in the drinking water? My friend's hairdresser's cousin saw someone eat a parking meter. By the end of the week, you know more about lizard people than you ever wanted, and you're half convinced the CDC should just hire your family WhatsApp group as their new rapid response team. Of course, not all of it is doom and gloom. The memes reach historic levels. Keep calm and barricade the door shirts pop up on Etsy. Someone edits the Wikipedia page for zombie to include a link to Florida's tourism website. Even local businesses get in on the joke. Coffee shops offer apocalypse specials, and the neighborhood sandwich shop advertises bite-sized deals. If you don't laugh, you might cry, or at least doom scroll until sunrise. But underneath the jokes, a real sense of anxiety settles in. People who never worried about bath salts, or even knew what they were, now treat every late-night jogger and noisy garbage truck with suspicion. The boundary between real threats and viral rumors blurs until nobody's quite sure if that next push notification is an emergency or just another funny update. And through it all, information just keeps moving. A story that started as a police report is now a cultural phenomenon, ricocheting from group chat to meme page to the nightly news, looping back again with new rumors tacked on for good measure. The panic is contagious, not because the world is ending, but because the internet can make it feel like it is. So tonight, if you find yourself lying in bed with your phone, scrolling through a parade of zombie memes and disaster posts, take a breath. Remember, not everything viral is true, and not everything trending is worth a midnight panic. Especially in Florida, sometimes the only thing more contagious than a rumor is the urge to hit share. No story about bath salts is complete without Florida Man. He's not a single person. He's a way of life. Shirtless, shoeless, and probably on the news. He is both the warning and the punchline. Let's be honest. Florida Man is an institution. If you search the phrase, you'll find a bottomless archive of headlines that read less like crime reports and more like Mad Libs after 3 Red Bulls. Florida Man tries to rob Wendy's with alligator. Florida Man arrested after attempting to build time machine from microwave parts. And of course, during the bath salts epidemic, Florida Man bites stranger, claims to be the Lizard King. You can't make this stuff up, and you don't need to. Florida Man is already doing it for you. The legend of Florida Man goes beyond one person. It's a cultural force, a living meme, and an all-purpose explanation for why your cousin Jimmy never got invited to Thanksgiving again. If you live in Florida, you've either seen him, met him, or, on a really bad day, been him. He's always up to something just this side of believable, usually shirtless, often sunburnt, sometimes wearing a traffic cone as a hat. And when the bath salts craze hit, Florida Man was ready. Actually, Florida Man was already outside, wrestling a mailbox before anyone else even heard the news. During the panic, Florida Man headlines became almost a comfort. If he could survive another wild night in the Sunshine State, armed with nothing but duct tape and the stubbornness of a raccoon, you probably could too. He's the patron saint of bad decisions and accidental resilience. He's the only guy who can make you say, well, at least it wasn't me, and mean it with your whole heart. There's a strange sort of unity in this. Floridians know the type. Maybe he's the guy at the corner store, always barefoot and somehow carrying 3 bags of ice and a small iguana. Maybe he's the neighbor who tries to fix the AC unit with a butter knife and sheer force of will. You spot him in the wild, usually near a Waffle House, often talking to himself, and you don't judge. You just nod and keep your distance, hoping today isn't the day he decides to borrow your garden gnome for a science experiment. But there's an odd nobility to Florida Man too. He endures hurricanes, alligator-infested canals, and, for a brief moment, in 2012, a full-blown zombie panic. He's the guy who takes on the weirdness so you don't have to. He makes the mistakes, gets his 15 seconds of viral fame, and keeps the rest of us humble. Maybe, in another state, his antics would land him in the back of a police car, which, to be fair, sometimes they do. But in Florida, he's a folk hero. The bath salts chapter simply upped the ante. Where the rest of the country saw chaos, Florida Man saw an opportunity for misadventure, for legend, and occasionally for a very confusing police report. Sure, he was the warning. Don't try this at home, or anywhere, really. But he was also the punchline, a walking, talking, Florida-shaped shrug at the absurdity of existence. And in the end, Florida Man is us, if we dropped all our inhibitions, let the sun bleach our hair, and just leaned into whatever madness the day had to offer. He's the hero of a story no one wanted to write, but everyone secretly loves to read. The ultimate survivor, the cautionary tale, and the guy you hope never recognizes your car in the parking lot. So tonight, as you drift off, spare a gentle, slightly bewildered salute to Florida man. Because in a state where the rules are optional and reality is negotiable, someone has to be the mascot for surviving the chaos, shirtless, shoeless, and still, somehow, undefeated. Time for the government's educational response. Sober men in suits warn teenagers about the dangers of substances with names like Purple Wave. Teens are too busy laughing at the names to listen. It always starts the same way: an emergency meeting at City Hall, a flurry of press releases, and an urgent call for awareness. Out come the public service announcements, as earnest as they are awkward. The local TV slot is suddenly filled with slow-motion shots of suburban teens shaking their heads sadly while a monotone narrator asks, "Would you risk your future for a packet called lunar dust?" Cut to a grim-faced sheriff holding up a baggie of glittery powder and looking like he's about to read the Miranda rights to a bottle of bath bubbles. It's an uphill battle from the very first broadcast. The kids, already experts at tuning out authority, watch the warnings with the same attention they give to commercials for car insurance. There's always that one unfortunate official who tries to sound cool. "These drugs are whack, yo," and instantly becomes a meme. Social media explodes with gifs of the governor mispronouncing mephedrone, and by the end of the week, not even once, posters are covered with hand-drawn unicorns and glitter. Schools do their part with special assemblies. The gym is packed not with excitement, but with the unique dread that only comes from knowing your PE teacher is about to act out a bath salt scenario in front of the entire 8th grade. There's a PowerPoint full of chemical names that sound like discount Star Trek villains. Beware, kids. Mephedrone, methylone, and Captain Pyrovalerone are out there. The only real takeaway for most students is that someone, somewhere, named a drug Ivory Wave. But the efforts don't stop at school. Billboards spring up overnight. "Don't be a zombie. Stay off bath salts." Drivers stuck in traffic now get a crash course in synthetic cathinones between radio ads for used cars and water parks. Some towns even try more creative methods, like hiring local theater kids to perform cautionary skits at city events. No, Chad, don't eat the air freshener. The audience is mostly there for the free donuts, but the message, in some form, trickles through. Parents get pamphlets mailed to their homes, full color, glossy, and packed with advice that no one really knows how to follow. If your child begins speaking in riddles or shows a sudden interest in eating traffic cones, consult a physician immediately. Family dinner turns into an impromptu Q&A. "No, Dad, I haven't seen anyone eat a mailbox." "Yes, Mom, I promise not to accept candy from strangers or anything called Funky Monkey." Meanwhile, teens invent new ways to tune out. Headphones go in, group chats light up, and someone starts a rumor that the school nurse confiscated a whole box of bath bombs just in case. By the end of the month, the only thing spreading faster than the PSA is the joke that you should never trust anything labeled not for human consumption, including your uncle's mystery chili at Thanksgiving. Still, the adults persevere. The next school board meeting includes a proposal for mandatory locker searches and possibly hiring a bath salt detection dog. Someone wonders aloud if you can get a government grant for catnip-sniffing kittens. Local news features a special report on parents fighting back, complete with B-roll of empty playgrounds and a dramatic close-up of a lonely packet of Epsom salts. In the end, public service announcements do what they always do: give everyone a chance to feel like they're doing something. Maybe a handful of kids actually listen. Maybe a few parents feel a little less powerless. And maybe, just maybe, the world is a tiny bit safer, or at least better, at coming up with new names for things you should never, ever put in your mouth. And as the credits roll on another well-meaning PSA, teens everywhere close their laptops, roll their eyes, and get back to the important work of surviving adolescence in the age of zombies, memes, and government warnings about things named Cloud 9. Eventually, the bans arrive. Bath salts vanish from gas stations, replaced by slightly less exciting packets of energy dust. The epidemic slows, but the stories and the memes linger like humidity. At first, the new rules feel like a victory lap. City councils celebrate. Lawmakers pose for triumphant photos with seized packets of Cloud 9 and Ivory Wave, like fishermen who just reeled in a really disappointing catch. Gas station shelves are stripped clean overnight, the only thing left behind a dusty display stand and a faint, lingering sense of, wait, what just happened? Regulars wander in and out, blinking at the sudden disappearance. The late-night crowd that used to buy herbal incense in bulk now finds themselves choosing between generic energy shots and overcooked hot dogs. The thrill is gone. Clerks, who spent months mastering the art of plausible deniability, are back to discussing lottery odds and the best window cleaner for bug splatter. The streets are quieter, at least for a while. Police scanners no longer buzz with reports of shirtless men doing interpretive dance in the median. The emergency rooms see fewer cases of believes he's being chased by invisible iguanas. Even the neighborhood Facebook page has to admit that things feel calmer, though there's always one person, insisting it's just the calm before the next weird storm. But just because the packets are gone doesn't mean the panic disappears. If anything, it settles into local legend. People swap stories about the time my cousin's friend tried to eat a mailbox, and new residents get initiated with cautionary tales of the Great Bath Salts panic of 2012. Parents continue to warn their kids, just in case some rogue packet resurfaces behind the beef jerky. The urban legends and memes take on a life of their own, resurfacing every time a new, strange headline hits the news. Meanwhile, the legal whack-a-mole continues. For every new law, there's a new loophole, and within weeks, new products hit the shelves with names like energy dust, solar flare, or ultra cleaner. The labels promise 100% legal and guaranteed not for human consumption, but everyone knows the drill. The cycle is never-ending. Ban, replace, ban again. The only thing more persistent than the chemists making these products is the Florida humidity. For the companies that profited off the bath salts era, it's a pivot, not a defeat. The manufacturers simply swap a few molecules, print up a new label, and ship out the next big thing. Somewhere in a nondescript office park, a marketing team is brainstorming new novelty product names that walk the razor's edge of legality. The supply chain adapts. The customers, ever curious, adapt right along with it. In the background, the real winners are the storytellers and the meme makers. Those wild headlines and blurry smartphone videos become legend, the kind you break out at a barbecue when someone asks, "So what's the weirdest thing that's ever happened around here?" There's always someone with a story about a neighbor, a cousin, or that one time the police had to chase a guy through a car wash at midnight. Everyone laughs, everyone shakes their head, and everyone agrees. Only in Florida. A year passes, then two. The old panic fades, but the stories never really die. There's a new drug scare, a new round of public service announcements, and a new generation of Florida kids learning the phrase "not for human consumption." But in the quiet, humid nights, as the fan hums and the headlines scroll by, people remember the era of bath salts, a time when the world went weird, everyone panicked a little, and zombie became the state's unofficial mascot. So, when the ban hammer falls, life goes on, stranger, perhaps, but always a little wiser, and with one more absurd chapter added to the Great Florida Storybook. After the panic passes, what's left? A handful of survivors, some real trauma, and a lot of ER bills. Rehab clinics try to keep up, but funding dries up the second the news cycle moves on. It's the morning after the hurricane, metaphorically speaking. The zombie headlines have faded, replaced by fresh scandals, new memes, and the return of Florida's usual weirdness. The gas station shelves are stocked with energy shots and beef jerky, the only reminder of the bath salts era, a few faded, not for human consumption stickers hiding in a drawer somewhere. But for some, the storm hasn't really passed. It just moved indoors. For the people who actually used bath salts, the aftermath is a mixed bag of confusion, regret, and paperwork. There are awkward family reunions, stories nobody really wants to retell, and memories as fuzzy as the legal line between incense and illegal. Some users are lucky. They shake off their bad trip, delete a few embarrassing social media posts, and try to avoid eye contact with the neighbor whose mailbox may or may not have been bitten. Others aren't so fortunate. Some struggle with lingering paranoia, anxiety, or the kind of sleep schedule you can only get from wrestling with invisible lizards at 3 a.m. Families step in, sometimes with compassion, sometimes with denial, and sometimes with a stack of Google printouts about supporting your loved one after a synthetic drug incident. Support groups spring up, some official, others just a circle of neighbors sharing coffee, and you'll never believe what happened stories. But as soon as the media loses interest, the funding dries up. Local rehab clinics, briefly overwhelmed with zombie drug cases, find their resources stretched thin. The donation bins at the front desk fill with more coloring books than cash. Meanwhile, the survivors do what survivors do best: improvise. Those who needed medical attention now have a wallet full of itemized hospital bills and a stack of paperwork from insurance adjusters who aren't entirely convinced that believed mailbox was a portal to Atlantis, counts as a pre-existing condition. Many simply avoid the whole system, too embarrassed, too broke, or too busy trying to move on. The health professionals, those exhausted ER doctors and overcaffeinated nurses, get little thanks, but plenty of stories. They remember the faces, the confusion, the bizarre explanations, and the phone calls to poison control that ended in long silences and uncertain advice. Some patients come back, sheepish, grateful, or still a little wired. Others vanish, leaving only a weird story in the break room and a reminder to always lock the supply closet. Rehab clinics try to help, but the cycle is tough. For a few months, there's a spike in funding, a rush of public interest, and a couple of community awareness events featuring free sandwiches and long PowerPoints. Then the panic cools, the cameras disappear, and the money gets rerouted to the next big thing. Counselors work miracles with what little they have, but burnout is real and turnover is high. Remember the bath salts wave? Becomes a phrase spoken in hushed tones at Friday staff meetings, usually followed by a group sigh and a round of snacks. Some people do get real help. A lucky few find their way to steady recovery, real support, and the ability to laugh, eventually, about their zombie days. But the structural problems, the gaps in care, and the patchwork of resources never really go away. The community is left to pick up the pieces with bake sales, charity 5Ks, and the collective agreement to never, ever bring up the time Greg tried to marry a street sign. The bath salts epidemic didn't end with a Hollywood-style cure or a sweeping victory. It ended, as most things do, with a slow drift back to normal, some real scars, and a new set of cautionary tales. Because when the panic passes, what's left is people, messy, stubborn, and occasionally a little wiser than before. And in Florida, that's as close to a happy ending as you're ever going to get. Bath salts go out of style, but the cycle continues. New designer drugs pop up every year with new warnings, new panics, and new excuses to lock your doors before sunset. You'd think, after all the mayhem, Florida would collectively decide, maybe let's not try the mystery powder from the gas station this time. But human curiosity and, let's face it, boredom runs deep. Before you know it, there's a new product behind the counter. It's got a fresh label, totally legal energy crystals, a new set of ingredients you can't pronounce, and a warning so specific it might as well be a dare. Do not ingest, inhale, snort, eat, sprinkle, or even look at this product for more than 6 seconds. Naturally, someone immediately wants to see what happens if they blink. The local news can barely keep up. The anchors have traded their zombie panic voice for their concerned but bemused voice, but the rhythm is always the same. First comes the mystery chemical, then the wild stories. Florida man attempts yoga on rooftop after consuming solar powder. 3 hospitalized after mistaking herbal blitz for foot powder. By day 3, the neighborhood Facebook group is back at DEFCON 2. Someone's already drafted a petition to ban anything that comes in a shiny packet. Meanwhile, lawmakers and officials dust off last year's playbook, swapping bath salts for the new villain. Public service announcements are updated, complete with fresh PowerPoints and stock footage of nervous teens and suspicious bags of white powder. School assemblies return, this time warning against Zen dust or legal lightning. The only thing that's really changed is the color of the PowerPoint slides and the length of the chemical names. The cycle never really ends because the market for novelty is endless. Chemists tweak molecules just enough to slip through the latest ban, packaging the results with ever more surreal branding. There's a certain Florida optimism in the air. If it's legal this week, it must be safe. Never mind that the warning label now comes with a footnote, a QR code, and a legal disclaimer longer than the Declaration of Independence. Parents brace themselves for the next round. This time, they're a little more prepared, at least until their kid comes home talking about a friend who tried moon, rocks, and spent an hour speaking fluent raccoon. Social media cranks up the rumor mill, and by sunset, there's a new meme, a new panic, and another run on canned soup at the supermarket. Hospitals and clinics prepare for the surge. ER staff play bingo with patient symptoms. Believes he's a cloud, B7, trying to eat grass, I12, and everyone develops a sixth sense for the phrase totally legal. The public health warnings pile up. If it glows in the dark, maybe don't put it in your mouth. If it has more X's than vowels, keep it on the shelf. The message is the same as last year and the year before, but hope springs eternal. If you're a gas station owner, it's déjà vu all over again. New reps, new boxes, new disclaimers. The only constant is the nervous feeling that one of those packets will make the news for all the wrong reasons. Your regulars eye the new products with the same caution they reserve for gas station sushi, curiosity and dread in equal measure. And for the rest of us, it's just another round in the world's weirdest game of whack-a-mole. Florida's cycle of panic, ban, and repeat rolls on, accompanied by a soundtrack of, can you believe this? Stories and the steady hum of the neighborhood fan. Lessons are sort of learned, then quickly forgotten, as soon as the next packet with a shinier name appears. So the next time you see a news alert about the latest legal high, just remember, history may not repeat, but in Florida, it definitely rhymes. With a dash of glitter, a handful of warnings, and at least one new reason to double-check your door locks before bed. A decade later, was the zombie apocalypse as terrifying as it felt? In hindsight, a lot of it was media hype, urban myth, and pure Florida chaos. But for a while, it really did feel like the end times, if the end times involved more tank tops and less dignity. It's easy, now, to scroll through the old headlines and laugh. The face-eating incident. The endless parade of Florida man stories. The memes about bath salts and mailboxes, and all those local news anchors desperately trying to keep a straight face while discussing synthetic cathinones. We tell the stories at backyard barbecues and pool parties, everyone adding their own twist. I heard my cousin's neighbor saw a guy run faster than a golf cart after eating a packet of solar dust. Didn't Cheryl say her mailman started speaking Latin? All I remember is nobody wanted to use the water fountain at the gym for about 6 months. But memory, like Florida humidity, is sticky and unreliable. At the time, the panic felt real. People double-locked their doors and checked their backyards for signs of weird behavior. Parents interrogated their kids about every strange packet or new friend. Neighborhood Facebook groups ran hotter than a July sidewalk. Even the alligators looked a little more nervous than usual. The media did its part, piling on with wild headlines, expert panels, and breathless interviews. For a few surreal weeks, Florida was the center of the universe, and everyone wanted to know. Was this the start of the real-life apocalypse, or just another Sunshine State spectacle? Late-night TV hosts had a field day. Out-of-state relatives called, concerned, and asked, "Is it safe to visit?" It was, if you avoided gas station potpourri and had a high tolerance for weird. And yet, for every wild story, there were 100 quieter moments that never made the news. The friends who checked in on each other, the families who sat down and actually talked about drugs, maybe for the first time ever. The neighbors who organized watch groups, sometimes with more enthusiasm than effectiveness, but still, community was built out of chaos. Even the exhausted ER staff and police officers got through it together, with coffee, inside jokes, and a brand new respect for the creative power of panic. Looking back, what stands out isn't just the fear, but the sheer absurdity. Florida has always run on weird, but the bath salts panic took things to a whole new level. For a brief, glorious stretch, reality was suspended. The rules didn't apply. You could blame being late to work on zombies, and people would nod solemnly. You could wear a traffic cone on your head in public, and the most you'd get is a sympathetic pat on the back. Mailboxes became local celebrities, and not for human consumption entered the cultural lexicon right next to bless your heart and only in Florida. And what about the people at the center of it? Some still carry scars, a few still owe money to the ER, and everyone has a story that starts with, "You're not going to believe this," but most folks just kept going. The crisis faded, the headlines moved on, and Florida returned to its usual schedule of unpredictable weather, surprise wildlife, and the occasional newsworthy oddball. So, was it really that bad? Maybe not in the grand scheme of things. It was weird, it was wild, and for a minute, it was genuinely scary. But in the end, it was just another chapter in the book of You Can't Make This Up, Florida Edition. If anything, it proved that people can panic together, laugh together, and survive even the strangest of times, with or without bath salts. And if the world ever does end in a zombie apocalypse, at least Floridians will know exactly what to do. Double lock the door, check the pool for gators, and make sure someone's filming. After all, if you're going down, you might as well go viral. If it happened again, would you be ready? Would you barricade your door with pool noodles and canned cheese? Or would you just shrug, crack open a La Croix, and wait for the memes? Let's be honest, if there's any place on Earth that could handle a sequel to the bath salts panic, it's Florida. You've already got the basic supplies, beach towels, bug spray, and a robust sense of denial. The average Floridian has lived through hurricanes, gator crossings, power outages, and at least one neighbor who thought bathrobe was a perfectly acceptable outfit for the grocery store. In other words, you're built different. First, you'd want to revisit your home's security. Forget steel doors and alarm systems. This is Florida. Your best defense is a decorative moat, strategically placed pink flamingos, and of course an entire arsenal of pool noodles. Soft, colorful, surprisingly intimidating to both zombies and overzealous HOA presidents. Some locals might go the extra mile and install a beware of cat sign, knowing full well that nothing deters chaos like a mildly annoyed tabby. Supplies? Stock up early. Not just canned beans and bottled water. Everyone's got that covered. But the true essentials: bug spray, sunscreen, snack cakes, and enough La Croix to survive until next hurricane season. Maybe toss in a case of Vienna sausages, just in case you need to bribe a possum for safe passage. Communication is key. Last time, the neighborhood Facebook page became a cross between a support group and a live-action soap opera. This time, you're ready. Group chats are prepped. Memes are on standby. Your aunt is already forwarding warnings about bath salts too. Electric boogaloo before the first news story even breaks. If there's a curfew, you'll get the update from 3 sources before the city has time to post it. You'll also need a plan for entertainment. Remember, panic thrives in the absence of distraction. Keep your board games, card decks, and Netflix queue fully loaded. Consider organizing a zombie watch party, BYO binoculars, snacks, and sense of irony. The rules are simple. First one to spot a Florida man in the wild wins bragging rights and a souvenir traffic cone. Out in the world, you'll want to maintain situational awareness. Any odd behavior, someone doing the worm in the parking lot, a jogger wearing 3 layers of ponchos and no shoes, should be noted, then shrugged off with a gentle, "Must be Tuesday. You've seen weirder." If anyone starts gnawing on public property, just move a safe distance away and text your group chat. It's happening again, you'll write, and the likes will roll in. If things get truly wild, you have options. Some folks might barricade themselves with canned cheese and optimism. Others will lean in, documenting every moment for social media and hoping to go viral again. No matter what, you'll stay hydrated, wear SPF 50, and remember to check the backyard for unexpected wildlife before venturing outside. Of course, it's not all about self-preservation. The real secret to surviving a new bath salts panic, like any Florida event, is looking out for your neighbors. The ones who borrow your ladder, wave at you from across the fence, and occasionally show up at your door to ask, "Did you hear the news?" You trade supplies, swap stories, and share an unspoken agreement. If the world goes weird again, you'll get through it together, one meme at a time. So, would you survive another bath salts epidemic? Absolutely. With humor, community, and a stash of snacks, there's nothing Florida can throw at you that you can't handle. Just remember, when things get strange, stay calm, stay kind, and above all, never, ever eat anything labeled not for human consumption. If all else fails, grab a pool noodle, pour a LaCroix, and enjoy the show. It's Florida, after all. This isn't your first rodeo. Finally, the most daring challenge of all, trying to actually get some sleep, knowing your neighbor might be fighting a recycling bin at 3 a.m. But hey, if you can sleep through Florida's zombie apocalypse, you can sleep through anything. The evening air is thick, somewhere between soup and blanket, and your windows vibrate with the soft hum of crickets, frogs, and the occasional, inexplicable shout from down the block. You pull your sheet up to your chin and check your phone one last time. The group chat is full of updates. Saw someone wrestling a mailbox again. Is it just me, or did the neighbor's cat learn how to open doors? Why does it sound like someone is gargling marbles outside? Welcome to bedtime in the Sunshine State. You start with the basics. Blackout curtains to keep the neon glare of the streetlights and flashing police cruisers out of your eyes. A ceiling fan on high, humming louder than the inside of a jet engine. Maybe you turn on a white noise machine, but honestly, nothing can drown out the sound of a distant Florida man saga in progress. Someone out there is probably live streaming the neighborhood's finest moments, and you hope, for your own dignity, that you aren't in the background of any viral video. You run through your bedtime checklist: doors locked, windows latched, leftover empanadas secured safely in the fridge. You try a little meditation, but the Calm app wasn't designed for a place where wildlife and weirdness keep such late hours. Breathe in and out and try to ignore the sound of someone playing bongos on the storm drain. If you're lucky, the only thing keeping you awake is the humidity, or possibly the distant shriek of an armadillo with a vendetta. Eventually, you settle in and close your eyes. The darkness is comforting until it's not. Was that a thump on the roof, or just the wind? Is the garbage can rolling down the street, or is someone testing their zombie apocalypse fitness routine again? Your imagination fills in the gaps, conjuring images of bathrobe-clad neighbors chasing raccoons, lawn chairs overturned in heroic midnight battles, and a stray gator giving you a judgmental side-eye from the end of the driveway. And yet, somehow, your body adjusts. You learn to tune out the background chaos and drift into a kind of Florida sleep, light, adaptable, and just alert enough to spring out of bed if someone yells, "The iguanas are back!" Your dreams get creative. One night, you're winning a Nobel Prize for inventing zombie-proof sunscreen. The next, you're hosting a late-night infomercial for tactical pool noodles. You wake up once or twice during the night. Maybe it's a car alarm. Maybe it's the neighbor's parrot yelling, "Lock the doors." Maybe it's your own subconscious whispering. At least you're not on bath salts. You peek through the blinds just in time to see someone jogging in flip-flops, swinging a flashlight and muttering about time travel. All is well. By sunrise, you realize you've done it. You've slept, more or less, through another night in zombie Florida. Your phone is full of new messages, the recycling bin is slightly dented, and the world outside is already heating up for the next round of Only in Florida headlines. You make coffee, yawn, and step out into the wild, humid embrace of another day. Because here's the truth. If you can sleep through this, you can sleep through anything. And every night you do, you add another invisible badge to your survived Florida sash, A quiet, ridiculous triumph only you and your fellow night warriors will ever fully understand. So tonight, as you close your eyes, tuck in your toes, and listen for the gentle lullaby of distant chaos, know that you're ready for whatever comes next. In Florida, even sleep is an adventure, and you, my friend, are an expert. Let's take a stroll through 2012 Craigslist in Florida, where you could buy a jet ski, a used couch, or, accidentally, enough bath salts to summon a small apocalypse. Every listing came with a risk. Will you get a great deal, or will you wind up in the next viral news story as unsuspecting citizen bitten by man in SpongeBob pajamas? The first thing you notice on Florida's Craigslist isn't the prices, it's the creative spelling and the ominous overuse of exclamation points, like new. Could mean anything from never used to only haunted by one or two spirits. And the range of available goods is truly something to behold. In the general for sale section, you'll find a slightly used above-ground pool, may include mysterious objects, a stack of DVDs described as guaranteed not cursed, and a 4-door sedan runs good, mostly except Tuesdays. Bath salts make their appearances in the least expected places. The health and beauty category offers aromatic crystals with a winking smiley face and a stern, not for human consumption label that's about as convincing as a traffic cone in a hurricane. Sometimes you'll see them tucked between ads for herbal incense and meditation enhancers, with sellers promising mind expansion and spiritual enlightenment. Or, at minimum, a real interesting Friday night. But the true magic of Florida Craigslist is in the mystery. Meeting up with a stranger in a Publix parking lot for a slightly stained couch and a handshake deal is already a leap of faith. During the bath salts era, that leap was more like Evel Knievel clearing Snake River Canyon, except instead of a motorcycle, you're in a 99 Corolla, double-checking your pepper, spray and questioning your life choices. You scroll past an ad for a gently used hammock, good for naps or hiding from bath salt zombies. The next listing is for emergency home defense, pool noodles, slightly chewed. The barter section is especially creative. We'll trade one working blender and a pet turtle for canned soup, mosquito netting, or zombie repellent. No weirdos. You laugh, but a tiny part of you wonders if maybe, just maybe, you should message them, just to be prepared. The real fun is in the personals. Seeking roommate must like cats, hate zombies, and be willing to split costs on bath salt-proof window bars. Or the classic, missed connection, you, running through Winn-Dixie parking lot, screaming about invisible iguanas. Me, hiding behind the bread aisle, thinking about calling my therapist. Coffee? And of course, there are the warning posts. Beware, don't buy aromatic crystals from anyone driving a van with a painted shark on the side. If someone offers you Cloud 9 in exchange for a used leaf blower, run. The comments section is a mixture of genuine concern, gentle ribbing, and Florida's trademark gallows humor. Hey, at least it wasn't alligators this time. For sellers, Craigslist is the ultimate test of optimism. You post an ad for your old futon, hoping to make a little cash. 3 hours later, you've received 6 offers to trade for bath salts, 2 lowball cash offers, and 1 request for your home address so I can come by at 2 a.m. You begin to wonder if maybe it's easier to just leave the futon on the curb and hope the zombies don't get it first. Yet, through all the weirdness, Craigslist remains Florida's digital bazaar, a chaotic, hopeful, slightly terrifying place where fortunes are made. Bath salts are sometimes accidentally acquired, and everyone has a story worth retelling. So, next time you browse those local listings, remember, in the great swap meet of life, you never know if you're buying a couch, making a friend, or auditioning for the next Florida Man headline. Buyer beware, and don't forget your pool noodle. Forget keto. The real 2010s Florida weight loss plan was simply living in a state of perpetual bath salts panic. Grocery shopping meant eyeing your fellow customers suspiciously while reconsidering the safety of anything powdered. Dinner conversations got awkward. Is that sugar, or should we call the police? Suddenly, the simple act of making a sandwich became an exercise in forensic science. You'd stand in the kitchen, squinting at the flour jar, wondering if it looked a little too fluffy. Powdered sugar on the brownies? That's a hard pass. Someone brings homemade cookies to the office potluck, and just to be safe, you break out the UV light and give them a careful once-over. Better to eat your feelings than accidentally eat a mystery crystal and end up in the next news cycle. The panic seeps into every meal. You second-guess the salt shaker, opt for unseasoned chicken, and start to wonder if maybe celery isn't so bland after all. Family dinners get tense. Who brought the mashed potatoes? Are those regular or, experimental? The whole table glances at Aunt Carol, who's always had a taste for adventure, and once tried to make her own kombucha. She's officially on watchlist status. Restaurants don't offer much comfort either. Waiters approach with a smile and a side of caution. Fresh Parmesan? They ask, holding a tiny grater with the solemnity of a chemist about to make history. You try not to flinch as they sprinkle anything white onto your pasta. Even birthday cakes aren't safe. No candles this year. Nobody wants to risk a sugar explosion. Just to be sure, you opt for a single scoop of ice cream and call it a night. Shopping becomes a high-stakes mission. The baking aisle, once a place of innocent joy, is now a gauntlet of danger. You push your cart past the cornstarch and baking soda with a new sense of respect. The spice section? A minefield. Is that powdered ginger, or something that's going to have you convinced the neighbor's cat is plotting against you? You skip it entirely, settling for prepackaged everything and a prayer. Even simple pleasures get complicated. Morning coffee, for example. You measure the creamer like you're handling plutonium, just in case. Anything that clumps, sifts, or dusts is a red flag. You catch yourself eyeing the barista, wondering if he's part of some underground herbal incense network, or just really enthusiastic about oat milk. The paranoia is contagious. Neighborhood cookouts become BYOB affairs. Bring your own bread, nothing powdered allowed. Someone suggests grilling marshmallows for s'mores, and there's an awkward silence before everyone quietly agrees on hot dogs instead. It's safer, somehow, when you can identify every ingredient by sight, smell, and probable country of origin. Kids don't make it easier. They come home with school snacks you've never heard of and a note from the principal about being vigilant. You start packing carrot sticks and apples, hoping nobody gets suspicious about the applesauce pouch. Lunch boxes are checked for contraband, and teachers eye anyone with a suspiciously happy granola bar. But as the months wear on, you adjust. You learn to trust again, at least a little. Maybe you sprinkle some salt on your fries. Maybe you accept a cookie from a friend without grilling them about its lineage. The world slowly rights itself, and by the time the next fad comes along, you're just grateful for the peace and the carbs. And so, Florida's bath salts panic becomes just another weird chapter in the ongoing saga of why can't we have nice things? The bath salts diet fades into legend, an era of bland food, wild imaginations, and the world's first support group for people traumatized by powdered sugar. If nothing else, you finally have an excuse to turn down fruitcake for the rest of your life. Only in Florida could the bath salt saga get upstaged by the local wildlife. Dogs barking at invisible threats, cats vanishing under the bed for a week, and pet snakes apparently having existential crises. Somewhere, a YouTube video emerges of an iguana chasing a man who's convinced the lizards after his cloud nine. It's a strange hierarchy of chaos in Florida, where the only thing more unpredictable than your neighbor on a Tuesday night is the animal kingdom's response to the latest human shenanigans. The family dog, usually content with chasing tennis balls and barking at squirrels, develops a new hobby. Full-throated warning sessions aimed at invisible intruders. At 2 a.m, you jolt awake to frantic barking. Was it a shadow? A raccoon? Or perhaps, as your neighbor whispers in the morning, the spirits of bath salts past. Cats, meanwhile, take a more sophisticated approach. Sensing the spike in general weirdness, they vanish under beds, behind washing machines, and into attics, emerging only for snacks and the occasional dramatic stare out the window. They've survived hurricanes, lizards, and toddlers in superhero capes. A zombie scare is just another notch on their collar. Some say cats can sense evil. In Florida, they just sense headlines. And then there are the exotics. Pet pythons, far from their native swamps, develop what can only be described as a personality crisis. Owners discover their once laid-back snake now spends evenings staring at a single spot on the wall, contemplating the meaning of life, or possibly just plotting the best escape route if things get weirder. Meanwhile, the local parrot picks up new phrases from the neighborhood panic. Lock the door, stay inside, don't eat that. A helpful, if slightly unnerving, addition to your morning routine. Of course, the wild animals get in on the act. Iguanas, those mini dinosaurs of Florida suburbia, suddenly become internet sensations. Someone records a viral clip. A sunburned man sprinting down the sidewalk, clutching a plastic bag, as a 6-foot iguana chases him with what looks like actual intent. The caption? Even the reptiles are done with our nonsense. The video racks up 1 million views in a week, and you start to wonder if maybe the iguanas have a point. Meanwhile, the local raccoons thrive. Chaos is their native language. With humans distracted by bath salts and backyard drama, raccoons raid garbage cans with impunity, organize synchronized attacks on bird feeders, and occasionally pause to watch a neighbor argue with his mailbox. It's a golden age for Florida's most enterprising bandits. Birds aren't left out, either. Flocks of sandhill cranes gather in parking lots, looking like ancient judges presiding over the latest bath salts incident. A rogue heron is spotted standing guard outside the 7-Eleven, as if enforcing its own brand of justice. And at least one pelican is rumored to have intervened during a midnight pool party, swooping low and scattering bathrobe-clad partygoers with a single mighty flap. Somewhere along the way, the boundaries blur. Was that a possum with a packet of aromatic potpourri, or just your imagination? Did the neighborhood duck really waddle off with someone's car keys, or is that just another story for next week's Facebook thread? In Florida, you learn not to ask too many questions. Eventually, things settle back to normal by Florida standards. Pets emerge from hiding, lizards reclaim the sunny spots, and snakes return to their meditative routines. But you never forget the night your dog barked at the recycling bin for 3 hours, or when you caught your cat watching the news with narrowed eyes. In the end, Florida's animals are survivors. They've seen it all, from hurricanes to bath salts to gator wrestling neighbors. And through it all, they remain the true experts in weathering chaos. No bath salts required. Every Floridian has a summer of bad decisions, but in 2012, it was practically mandatory. Pool parties, beach bonfires, and someone always suggesting, let's try that new stuff from the gas station. Regrets were made, friendships tested, and at least one guy got his head stuck in a mailbox. Again. It starts innocently enough. School's out, the sun is blazing, and the only things more relentless than the humidity are the mosquitoes and your friend's bad ideas. The invitation comes at sunset, bonfire at Chad's, BYOB, and bring snacks, but like the safe kind. You show up, arms loaded with potato chips and bug spray, only to discover that someone has raided the gas station for herbal incense, ivory wave, and enough energy drinks to jumpstart a small car. The peer pressure is as thick as the air. Someone pops open a foil packet and grins. Don't worry, it's not for human consumption. Famous last words. There's an awkward silence, then a round of nervous laughter, and before you know it, everyone's double-checking their drinks and side-eyeing the marshmallows. Even the bonfire looks suspicious, flickering just a little too brightly under the full moon. Night after night, the stories get weirder. At the beach, someone brings a speaker and a mysterious Ziploc bag. It's bath salts, he says, but, not the murdery kind. A collective groan ripples through the crowd. You make a mental note to stick to Sprite, and maybe invest in a hazmat suit for next weekend's adventure. Still, the stories spread. About the girl who spent half the night convinced the lifeguard chair was talking to her, or the guy who tried to teach the seagulls how to moonwalk. Every party now comes with its own list of rules. No running by the pool, no glass bottles, and for the love of all that is good, no weird white powders. You start to miss the simplicity of your last summer, when the worst you had to worry about was getting sunburned or accidentally drinking the last Capri Sun. Now every cookout is an exercise in vigilance, and even the hot, dogs are eyeing you with suspicion. And then come the regrets. There's the friend who thought he could outswim a pontoon boat. Spoiler, he couldn't. The neighbor who mistook the garden hose for a snake and declared himself lord of the reptiles. At least one person ends up explaining to the ER nurse that, yes, he really did think it was just aromatic incense, and no, he doesn't remember putting his head in the mailbox. Again, the social fallout is real. Lifelong friendships are tested by a single text. Dude, do you remember what happened last night? New alliances are formed based on who managed to avoid the bath salts altogether. We're the Sprite Club now. Your phone fills up with blurry photos and memes, some so outlandish you're not sure if they're jokes or evidence. There's always that one photo of Chad, arm in arm with a plastic flamingo, looking like he's just discovered the secrets of the universe. Somehow, through all the chaos, summer keeps rolling. There are lazy afternoons spent floating in the pool, cautious evenings at the movies, and the occasional, desperate run to the grocery store for more snacks. You learn to appreciate the quiet moments, the ones that don't end in viral headlines or strange phone calls to your parents. By the time autumn rolls around, you've survived another season of Florida's finest nonsense. The bath salts epidemic fades, replaced by new fads and fresher bad ideas. You look back and laugh, mostly. After all, every Floridian knows summer is for making memories, testing boundaries, and collecting stories you'll never fully explain. Just try to keep your head out of the mailbox next time. So, tonight, as you drift off to sleep, Spare a peaceful thought for the brave souls who survived the Great Bath Salts Panic of 2010's Florida. Against all odds, and, frankly, against all common sense, they endured a season of wild headlines, midnight paranoia, and the ever-present risk of being mistaken for a zombie by their own grandma. In a state where the humidity could melt your willpower, and even the squirrels seemed stressed, people found ways to laugh, help each other, and occasionally just lock the door and hope for the best. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that human beings are remarkably resilient, especially when confronted by things that make no sense. Our ancestors survived freezing mud huts and public executions. Modern Floridians survived face-eating news alerts, mysterious white powders, and more than one neighbor who claimed to have fought off a raccoon using only positive affirmations. The truth is, we're all just muddling through the weirdness of our own era. Sometimes it's the Black Death. Sometimes it's Cloud 9 at a gas station. Sometimes it's just insomnia and a fan set to maximum. But through it all, we adapt, we laugh, and we, mostly, avoid eating street signs. So, as you settle into your clean bed, with no alligators under the mattress and no one outside arguing with a mailbox, maybe be quietly grateful for the calm, the quiet, and the blessed absence of breaking news about zombies on the causeway. Because even in the most absurd times, people carry on, finding comfort in community, humor in hardship, and, if you're lucky, a good night's sleep. Rest easy. You survived another wild chapter of human history. Tomorrow, you get to wake up somewhere slightly less ridiculous. Good night.